to begin with, SAT reading. A disclaimer, my handwriting is terrible. My students know that. I hope you are okay with this, and the gist is try to take as much notes as possible. Couple of concepts will be new. We will be introducing reading principles, how exactly you're supposed to target a passage, what to read, what not to read, right? So make it a point that you keep taking notes of whatever we are discussing. And if you have doubts, I would really appreciate that you mention all your doubts here itself, get those sorted. We have the FAQ section also, and around the end of session we can get those sorted. By the end of the session, make it a point that before you leave the session, make it a point that your doubts are sorted. All right. Now, fundamentally, the SAT reading part, SAT is SAT is known to test you on two things. A, your reasoning ability. So your verbal reasoning ability, how deep or how better you understand the language, English as such, the language, and correcting that, we are predominantly, or SAT is predominantly looking at how better you understand the US English or SAT English. That is certainly different than the regular English which we use, right? And we are going to talk about those differences over the period of time, right? So it would be unfortunate if you think that you get a chemistry passage and you are really performing well in that, and the same section you get a philosophy passage and you're not able to perform in that, right? So your SAT score should not be directly proportional to your whims and fancies, or rather your SAT reading accuracy should not be proportional to which subject or which topic you like. Irrespective, you are still solving English, right? Because it's an English test, right? So it would be really unfair to gauge your level in terms of verbal reasoning if your accuracy is proportional or is dependent on what topic of passage you are getting, right? So it is just to avoid that complete trap. Okay, you get a political passage, you get a philosophy passage. I've seen so many of my students make terrible mistakes just because they don't like the passage, and which is so wrong, right? It doesn't matter, we are still solving English. So in order to avoid that trap, we are completely devoting the entire SAT reading part, or dividing or characterizing the entire SAT reading part based on its question categories. We are dividing the SAT reading part in its question categories. Now we have factual questions and we have reasoning questions. Couple of you must be knowing this category, but this would be a complete revision for you. I think the last time you studied the fundamentals of SAT must be a while ago, right? Okay, so in order to avoid the trap of topics, what we have done here is we are trying to divide the entire SAT reading part in only all SAT questions. The 52 questions of SAT, we are trying to divide in only two categories, right? We have factual questions and we have reasoning questions. All right. What do you exactly mean by factual questions? Okay, factual questions. Factual questions are fundamentally the questions which are plain and simple, dependent on the fact given in the passage. That's about it. A question which is dependent on the fact which is clearly given in the passage, clearly upfront mentioned the passage, is or are factual questions, right? Now there are two categories of factual questions. We divide factual questions in two categories. We have data-based questions and we have evidence-based questions. For obvious reasons, one of the dreadful question category, or a question category which everyone is really afraid of, is evidence-based questions. We are going to really get a hang of this question category, right? To begin with, let's start with data-based questions. How exactly you are supposed to solve data-based questions? All right. Now, what are data-based questions? Anyone, could you please tell me what are data-based questions? Quickly, one sentence, one. What are data-based questions? Yes, guys. Guys, you there? Hello? Awesome. Yes, Tushar, you're right. Which can be mentioned from the information given. Vanshika, you can hear me, right? Yes, thanks, Pushkar. Perfect. Yeah, just let's try to make this session as much interactive as possible, because definitely there is going to be information download here. But I would love that you are interactive here. Half the time I'm just guessing whether my thing is working or not. Right? Okay. Database questions. As Tushar correctly mentioned, the questions which are predominantly based on information or the data, if we call it, the data given in the passage, right? So there are some interesting steps to solve data-based questions. You follow these steps, you will certainly get the answer. The most important step in solving a data-based question is knowing what exactly the question is expecting from you. And there is a reason I've put this as the first step, because I've seen great students making mistakes just because they didn't read the question properly. So there is no harm in at least reading the question twice. You can get into the habit of reading the question twice, and this will certainly help you in solving the entire SAT reading chunk together. You would typically avoid the traps, right? Where you're supposed to find which of the following must satisfy the condition, which of the following could satisfy the condition, questions like that, right? Okay. So the first thing is at least read the questions twice. Read the question twice, just to understand what exactly the question is expecting from you. If you know the question is expecting a particular, let's call it, if a question is expecting a particular keyword, so by reading the question twice, you are focusing on that particular keyword. You are understanding what the keyword is, right? Now, once you understand what keyword is expected in the question, moving on, you are supposed to. Database questions are typically the questions where line reference is already mentioned in the question itself. I'm not talking about the options. The line references are mentioned in the question. For example, the word avalanche in line number 32 means what exactly? Right? Now, the word benevolent in line number 57 means what exactly? So all these vocabulary related questions are are typically the are typically the data-based questions. All right. So what you're supposed to do, the first trick or the first thing which will make sure that your accuracy is intact in database questions is always read 2 plus and 2 minus. What do I mean by 2 plus and 2 minus? So the moment you locate that particular line reference, you are supposed to go two sentences above and 2 sentences below that particular line reference. All right. You have to go 2 sentences up and 2 sentences down. I'm not talking about lines. Read 2 sentences up and 2 sentences down that typical line reference or that reference which you have. So once you do that, you get a context of what exactly the author is trying to ask or what exactly that word means, right? Once you know that, the best way to move forward is use POE. This is going to be your best friend in SAT. POE is what? Process of elimination. Absolutely right. You're supposed to read the context and find the tone. Instead of finding the tone, honestly, Vanshika, we would rather just understand what exactly the story is saying us. The database question category might not just be that typical vocabulary question, but might also be a line which is mentioned in line number 32. What that particular line means, which is given in inverted commas, or that particular phrase means. So for that, once you read 2 sentences up, 2 sentences down, you will be able to figure out what the context is saying, and based on that you can use the process of elimination. So in process of elimination, you are supposed to eliminate Eliminate all the options. Eliminate all the options which are not in sync with point 3. You just read point number 3, right? So point number 3 is what? Two sentences up, two sentences below. Sorry, which are not in sync with point number 2. So use the process of elimination and eliminate all the options which are not in sync with that. Plain and simple, right? You use that, you will be, majority of the times, you will be able to eliminate 3 of the options. But what about the worst case scenario when you are not able to eliminate 3 of the options? You are able to eliminate only 1, or you are able to eliminate only 2. So at that point of time, the worst case scenario. What is my worst case scenario? When I'm not able to eliminate more than 1, or when I'm stuck with more than 1, right? In that case, when you have more than 1 answer option left out, you have to use the option. This is a very interesting concept, certainly will help you in real SAT. You will, in last 4 real SATs, we are noticing a pattern that the factual questions or the database questions, you might not be able to eliminate 3 options unless and until you really understand the story of the entire passage. All right. So what you're supposed to do here, in worst case scenario, plug the options. The options which you are stuck with. Let's say you are stuck with answer option B and D, right? Plug the option in the context of the question. Plug the option in the context of the question and reread. All right. So plug the option in the context of the question and reread. So when you reread, you will be able to eliminate. So the best part with respect to SAT, are you looking for one correct answer? Not really. All that we are doing here is we are focusing finding 3 incorrect options. And this is going to be your Brahmastra. Figuring out having 3 incorrect options is exactly what you'll be doing. For all the 52 questions of SAT reading and for all the 44 questions of SAT writing, you are here to just figure out the 3 incorrect options. Intuitively, we are really good at finding out faults, right? So when you plug in, you're not supposed to figure out which option works. You are supposed to figure out which option does not work, or which option is not in sync. Once you reread, eliminate the one which is not in sync, which is not in sync with whatever is being asked. Does that make sense? Right? Anyone, any doubts for this question category, a database question, so that I can move on and we can talk about reading principles also. Yes, guys. Disha, Rida, any doubts? Jay, Ayush. Thanks, Ronak. Thanks, Vanshika. Perfect. Thanks, Anju. Thanks, Pushkar. All right, great. Perfect. Thanks, Ija. Awesome. Moving on. Now, I'm slightly diverting the topic from practicing the factual questions. Thanks, Devansh. From practicing the factual questions, let's talk about how exactly we are supposed to read the passages, right? Let's call it the reading principles. What are the reading principles of SAT? What exactly you're supposed to focus at and what you're supposed to not focus at, right? This part is a very important or probably a new concept for you guys. I would strongly recommend sit straight. After each and every rule, please mention whether you have understood the concept or not, right? After each and every rule, I want your yes or no. Okay, else I'll just run a poll. Entire idea is this is a new concept. You might take some time understanding it. I would love that you ask those questions right away. All right, great. Now, first rule. Rule number 1: structure words. These rules are specific with respect to SAT reading only, or SAT reading comprehensions only, and these rules come out of the extensive analysis which we have done of the latest SAT papers and the college board SAT papers. So it is very important that you understand this rule and try to implement it, right? You have been reading in a certain manner for over a period of your life, right? Probably 16, 18 years, right? uh, what I am asking you right now is there is a bit of unlearning here. The way you are supposed to read, there's a bit of unlearning here. So just focus on these rules, structure words. Now, what exactly are the structure words? We'll make it a point that after this session, each of you would get an email of the structure word list. What are the structure words? Structure words are fundamentally the words. I would not be using grammatical jargons here. My idea is to make sure that this is as easy as possible for you. So if you don't understand, just ping me. Structure words: the words which define a particular sentence or which gives structure to a particular sentence are structure words, plain and simple. So for example, we have contrast indicators. What are the contrast indicators? Say, Khush is a really hardworking student, comma, but. The moment we have a but, right, and we have hardworking here, hardworking has a positive connotation, but we have a but here. But is a contrast indicator. So contrast indicator means from positive, it would move to negative. Khush is a really hardworking student, comma, but he is very lazy, or he something like that, right, Kush? So contrast indicator talks about when the entire sentence, the meaning of the sentence is about to get changed, right? So structure indicators, in structure words, we have but, we have however, we have moreover. Now moreover is not a contrast indicator. I'm just writing out the structure words, right? But, however, moreover, even though, although, because is also a structure indicator, structure word. So the moment, so the rule says, the moment you see a structure word in a given passage, when you see a structure word, slow down. When you see a structure word in a passage, slow down. Thanks, Devansh. What does that mean? When you see a structure word in a passage, slow down. 60% of SAT questions, 60% of SAT questions are focused on, or the answers of 60% of SAT questions are focused on what comes after structure words. Do you follow this? Right? Majoritively, as it is, as we are talking about 60%, right? So majority SAT questions, the answers of majority SAT questions comes from what comes exactly after the structure word. So structure word is kind of an indicator that we have to slow down. This is where I'm going to get the answer. Is that okay? I'm waiting for any questions or yes, no. Just go ahead, guys. Did you follow this question? Did you follow this rule? Guys, Ronak, do you want me to explain again? Ronak, do you want me to explain again? See, what's the rule? When you are reading a particular passage, right? When you're reading it out loud, or when you're reading just before answering the questions, then that's why this is the first principle. This is the most important principle, that you are supposed to focus on whatever comes after the structure word. Whatever comes after the structure word, this is very important. Rule number 2. Moving on. Perfect, guys. Thank you so much. I'm ending the poll. Great. Okay. Yes, Vanshika, we are going to talk about that part. Not really. We are not supposed to read the passage in 3 minutes in the initial stage. It's absolutely fine if you are taking time. All that matters in the initial stage is making it a point that your accuracy improves. We have to focus on your accuracy in the initial stage. Once your accuracy is close to around 90% or 85% plus, we should be opting to use some strategies to cut down your time, right? For now, irrespective, doesn't matter, out of 5 passages in the given amount of time, you're solving only 3 passages. And believe me, at this point of time, accuracy is the most important thing you should be focused on. Once accuracy is in place, then speed up, because by the time your accuracy is in place, you will have solved enough amount of passages where you already have understanding of the way you are supposed to solve the reasoning based questions. What exactly the author is expecting or the test taker is expecting, you already know that. Getting a hang of that will help you a lot in solving the passages in given amount of time. So for now, don't think about 3 minutes. All right. Now, rule number 2. All right. So this rule number comes from actually Vanshika's questions. She's confused with what to omit. Now, when you have a semicolon, in the moment you see a semicolon in the passage, there are two things. Let's say I have A and I have semicolon B. So both these sentences are complete ideas, or as a matter of fact, they are related to each other. So in semicolon concepts or semicolon sentences, all that you're supposed to do, if you have understood the A part, ignore the B part. Do not read the B part. Not required. If you have understood if you have not understood the A part, move on to B part. Does that make sense? I repeat, in semicolon sentences, if you have understood the first part of the sentence, there is no need to check or read the second part of the sentence. With respect to SAT, the purpose is already sufficed. You would not need to move on to the next part. And we are just cutting down the entire, we are trying to cut as much passage as possible, because we have come to a conclusion. This is still in the research phase, that we have come to a conclusion that 100% of the question can be solved by just reading 65% of the passage. I repeat, the entire SAT reading can be solved by just reading 65% of the passages. 65% of the passage, we are just ignoring the nonsense part, right? The moment, now the semicolon part, this rule can be elaborated further, that the moment you have for example, you're not supposed to read the examples. All right. So again, we are following certain rules where we are supposed to ignore. In semicolon, if you've understood the first part, you're supposed to ignore the second part. If you have not understood the first part, then only go ahead and read the second part, right? The moment we have for example in the passage, for example, this word is mentioned in the passage, you can ignore the examples, or you can just understand only one example. You don't need to understand the entire example. Moving on. Knowing this, in a given rule, obviously, rule number 3, the non-essential clauses. The non-essential clauses. What are the non-essential clauses? For example, let's say Pushkar, comma, while brushing his teeth, comma, saw Jennifer Lopez. Now, what is important in Pushkar's life? Yes, Pushkar, what is important in your life? Seeing Jennifer Lopez, right? For obvious reason, duh. In this case, while brushing his teeth can completely be eliminated, you can eliminate this part and straight away jump to the second part. So the moment you in your reading comprehension, if you see two commas, the non-essential clause can completely be eliminated. This part is known as non-essential clause. This is just for the sake of additional information. We absolutely have no need of knowing that additional information. SAT would not ask you any question what comes between the two commas, right? Whenever you see a phrase which is in between two commas, you can completely ignore that phrase, let go of that phrase. Does that make sense? Anyone, any doubts? Yes, Ronak. Thanks, Pushkar. Great. Waiting for the polls. Interesting results. Perfect. Great. Thank you so much, guys. Perfect. All right. So we have got three rules first. Rule number one, structure words. Rule number two, semicolon, semicolon, and for example. Rule number three, not essential. And a very interesting rule, majority of my students, I've seen the students use this rule. Excuse me. I've seen my students use this rule extensively. Or this is one of those rules loved by my students. Again, this is specific to SAT. Rule number four. If you see any sentence, I repeat, if you see any sentence running for more than 5 lines, if you see any sentence running for more than 5 lines, or it is not ending even after 5 lines, ignore that sentence. Ignore it completely. You would never have an answer which is based on such a huge. So technically, these sentences which are running for 5 or more lines, very rare. Out of 5 passages, you'll get one or two such sentences which are running for more than 5 lines. But all these sentences will always be either complex sentence or compound sentence. I repeat, all these sentences can never, a sentence which is running for 5 lines or above can never be a simple sentence. Now, in this scenario, a typical rule for SAT reading which applies is complex sentence and compound sentences which are more than 3 or 4 lines. Actually, I've just made it a bit easier, or rather, this rule will 100% apply. More than 5 lines, ignore all those complex or compound sentences. You would never have any question asking you on that particular chunk. That is complete utter rubbish, or it's just garbage. Typical place of finding these kind of sentences, and I think you must have noticed this, is in fighting scientist ones. When you see fighting scientists, or the typical passage when you have two passages, right, passage 1 and passage 2, and you're supposed to compare between them, those are the typical passages where you find more than 5, where you'll find more than 5 lines sentences. Is this clear? Yes, guys. Yes, absolutely right. Yes, Devansh, you are right. Right on that part. The moment you read the passage and you start figuring out, okay, this sentence is going above line, and that's exactly where I'm coming from, guys. Do not read the passage by just completely diving into the passage. You have to be aware of the external surrounding also. At the end of the day, when you leave the exam hall, it does not matter whether you know the story of the passage or not. I repeat, when you leave the exam hall, it does not matter whether you know the story of the passage number 2 or story of passage number 5. What matters is whether if you have got the answers correct or not. For that, you have to kind of get into habit of being okay to know what exactly or how long that sentence is approaching. What I've seen over the period of time, students who are insecure about their SAT reading, they completely, close their ears, close their entire thing, and they just focused on that particular passage. It's not going to help you. You're just diving into the passage. You're diving into the trap. So it is important that you're aware of the surrounding, how long that particular sentence is running, and whether you're supposed to ignore that or not. And this will come over the period of time, Devansh. We are not used to these kind of concepts. We are not used to letting go or ignoring a sentence in a particular passage, right? Again, moving on. Rule number 5, probably the last rule for the day. We'll move on, and we'll need enough amount of time to practice the figure out the steps for other kind of questions. Rule number 5: if the author or if the sentence is starting with negative connotation, if a sentence is starting with negative connotation, what do you mean by negative connotation? Author says that I don't want to say, or author is mentioning that I am not saying, I am not implying. If the author is not trying to imply something, you don't need to know that part. For example, I'm not saying that SAT is a difficult test. I don't need to know that SAT is difficult or not. If you're not saying that, ignore that complete part. Ignore the entire sentence, because that's a typical trap sentence. It will have a structure word, and this is one of those things which will hamper your primary purpose questions, or it will hamper your main theme questions. All right. So this is the easiest approach, or this is one of those ways you avoid the trap. If the sentence is starting with a negative connotation, ignore that sentence. If the author does not want us to know that, let's ignore that particular sentence. Or at times, particular passage. In the November SAT, it was a US based test. In the November SAT, we did figure out, we will be giving you those kind of examples, and we'll be talking about that probably in later webinars. Is this okay for now? Should we move on, guys? Are you okay? Are you comfortable? Rida, are you okay with this? Vanshika? Guys, I'm waiting for your option. Thanks. Great. Thanks, Ayush. Thanks, Kush. Perfect. All right. Moving on. We are moving towards the steps for evidence-based questions. Right? Let's talk about evidence-based questions. We call this question category as a couple question, or for that matter, we also say that we get one question completely free. It's a freebie, right? And I'll talk about it in detail in a moment. These are a couple questions. How you are supposed to solve the couple questions. The most trickiest question category probably of the entire SAT. Not even the reasoning questions. Majority of the mistakes end up happening in evidence-based questions only. Awesome, guys. I see a lot of students asking for reading help as opposed to writing, and it's interesting to know all my students and the attendees here are genius in writing. What are you scoring above 40? We have to make it a point that your score in writing is above 40. And I mean it, guys. This is writing is one of those sections where you can nail that section. Your complete score improves drastically. Your complete verbal score, as a matter of fact, your SAT score improves drastically based on your writing score. Make it a point that you score as high as possible in the writing part. All right, moving on. The evidence-based questions. To give you a scenario about the evidence-based question, can I say we always end up having two question categories in evidence, right? Question one is actually asking you a question, whatever that question is. Question one is either giving you a typical line reference, or question one is saying that what is the purpose of paragraph number 1, and there are some options in question number 2. There are obviously options. Question number 2 is always asking you which of the following is evidence for answer of question number 1. Do you agree with me? Right? We have question number 1, which is typically asking us a question, and we have question number 2, which is asking us to find out the evidence for that particular question. Right? So we have to solve both the questions together. You cannot have just one answer correct. Right? If you get only one of those questions correct, means you're bluffing. I repeat, it is very important for you to get both the answer correct or both of them wrong. You have to follow the steps and you will certainly get the answers correct. Right? What are the steps? Step number 1. And the most important step over the period of time I've realized is nothing beats this step. First step is reread the question. If you miss this step, both the questions are wrong. Reread the question number 1 till the point, till you understand what is being asked. Reread the question till the point you understand what's exactly being asked. You need to know what is being asked, right? Once you know that, once you are absolutely certain what is being asked, then we can move on the next step, and that is ignoring the options of question number 1 completely. Ignore the options of question number 1 completely. We do not need that. What we need is focus on options. Wait a minute. Jump at options of question number 2. Straight away jump, because this is exactly what is giving you the evidence, right? If this is what is giving you the evidence, you can straight away jump to this evidence and figure out which of them is correct. Agreed? Right? Which of the options of question number 2 is actually giving you the evidence? Figure out. Wait. Jump at options of question number 2. So go back to the passage. Go back to each line reference. To each line reference mentioned in the options. You have to go back to each and every line reference mentioned in the options of question number 2. Plain and simple. Agreed? So if you're okay, if you are going back to each and every line reference mentioned in the options of question number 2, then you're supposed to eliminate, use elimination techniques. How exactly you're going to eliminate this part? Use elimination techniques to do what? Get rid of unnecessary evidence. The evidence which is not necessary, you completely get rid of that. And this is kind of going to help you save time while matching the pairs. Now, once you do that, once you get rid of this part, then you are supposed to match the pairs of options of question 1 and options of question 2. Are you following, guys? once you eliminate the options, let's say question number 2, we have, wait, question number 2, we have A, B, C, D, right? So you eliminated A and D, you are stuck with B and C. Right exactly in front of question number 2, you can write question number 1. You just write it down and mention A, B, C, D. It just becomes very convenient because at times question number 1 is on one page and question number 2 is on another page, or it's exactly at the back side. So it would save your time to, you know, match the pairs. Instead of that, right in front of question number 2, you can just write A, B, C, D, the options of question number 1, and so that you can eliminate that, right? Once you understand the options, or once you eliminate the options of question number 2, then you are supposed to match the pairs, let's say, of the remaining options. Say for that matter, you eliminated A and you say that B, the pair B is being matched with B pair C, or B and D are being matched here. C you get rid of, right? That is the worst case scenario when you have more than, what is the worst case scenario? Worst case is when we have more than one pair, right? Worst case is when you have more than one pair. In this case, when you have more than one pair, go back. When you have more than one pair, the step involved is go back, read question 1 again, and plug options of question 1 with the context. You're supposed to plug the options of question number 1 with the context and try to figure out whether in this option, whether we have B correct or D correct. Whichever is correct, that entire pair is correct. Else you will eliminate B, so this entire pair is being eliminated. The answer will be D and C. Does that make sense? All that you're supposed to do here is, worst case scenario when you have more than one pair, go back, read the question 1 again, and plug the options of question number 1 with the context, and eliminate the one pair which is not satisfying or which is not in sync with what is being asked. Sounds good? Go ahead, guys. Please make a note of this. Ask questions. This has been a bit exhaustive session, or a bit exhaustive concept. Please go ahead, tell me whether you're okay with this or not. Yes, guys. Are you with me? Hello? Yes. So the sixth step is when you're stuck with two options. So let's say you are stuck with two pairs here, Vanshika. We have two pairs that let's say we have two pairs here. We have pair C and B and B and C for that matter. Okay. If two options talk about, it won't happen. As a matter of fact, you would think that the two options are talking about the same topic. In this case, and this is a very good question, I appreciate this question. In this case, this is really a worst case scenario when actually two options are talking about the same topic. In this case, one additional step which is required is, in the evidence, go 1 plus and 1 minus. I repeat. So for evidence of, let's say, answer option B in question number 2, it is talking about, let's say, line number 40 to line number 42. You are supposed to read a sentence before line number 40 and a sentence after line number 42. This is only when both the options or both the pairs, not the options, when both the pairs are talking about the same thing. This is indeed a worst case scenario. Only you might end up getting. So this is a very high difficulty level question. But if you get that, read a sentence as up and read a sentence up and read a sentence below that particular evidence portion. If that is answering your question, that is the correct answer. Does that make sense? Tushar, are you okay with this? Perfect. Vanshika, are you okay? Great. Perfect. Now, moving on. Let's talk about the reasoning based questions. Now, guys, the thing which we discussed here in the factual questions, right? In the factual questions, roughly we are expecting out of the 52 questions, we have 52 questions, right? Out of the 52 questions, we are expecting around 20 to 25 questions of factual category. These are always the lower hanging fruits. These are the easiest question to get correct. Your accuracy in these questions must be 100%. It is really difficult to make a mistake in these kind of questions. If you are making mistakes, you are doing something terribly wrong. Does that make sense, guys? You know what? We can take a 5 minutes break. In this 5 minutes, I'm going to give you a couple of things to be worked at. Just hold on for a moment. All right, I'm just writing a guys. I will be updating how exactly I'll be updating or using these tricks in real question categories, right? In order to follow that, the links and everything will be sent on these channels. Please go ahead. You can subscribe to these channels. It will help you understand, or it will help you keep a track of what exactly is happening. We are coming up with some other online resources exactly for you guys, to make it a point that all your concepts are taken care of, or you have access to the official college board questions, right? Or rather the solutions of these questions. We are coming up with a couple of resources like that. We'll keep you updated on this part. We'll appreciate, sorry, we'll appreciate if in case you're already subscribed, that you won't miss out on anything. Let me know once you're done, we can start. Thank you so much, Tushar. Yes. Yes, we'll be updating mostly by the end of this month, guys. You'll have access. See, it is in process, so I think it's a matter of time. We are done with couple of papers already. So the entire idea is to implement these concepts. Yes, Pushkar. Yes, all our updates will be available on. So I think from last, I don't know, 1 year, we've not been using our Instagram account at all. But lately we've starting seeing the traction there. Students asking questions. So we will make it a point that all our new updates, free webinars and everything would be mentioned in the stories, and the links will be mentioned on the Instagram accounts. Yes, thanks for asking. Yes, Devansh, that's the whole idea. That's why I'm asking you to, you can in using these concepts in the real exam. That's where students find the difficulty. So it is difficult for us, or rather for you guys also, to keep a track of what exactly happened in passage, Akira's passage for that matter, you know, the college board first test, Akira's passage. uh, in order to make it a point that you can access the methods and their application in real time, we are coming up with couple of online programs, or rather the solutions for the college boards and everything. So those videos and those course structure, I think, would be the links of those courses or the videos would be provided in these social handles. So you know, you can keep a track of that, because it is really difficult for us to keep on messaging every student that this is out, right? So you can just keep a track on these social handles and you'll get access to that. Is that okay, Devansh? Tushar, are you clear? Pushkar, comfortable? Should we move on? Great, thank you so much. Perfect, moving on. The concept of reasoning questions. The most interesting part of SAT, the crux of SAT score, or the crux of SAT score or SAT reading, comes from this chunk, the chunk of reasoning questions. Right? All right. Now in reasoning questions, this is a question category where it is really important for us to know the passage. The trick here is, guys, that the factual questions, you can solve each and every factual questions without actually reading the passage. You can ignore the passage, straight away jump to the question, and go back to the typical line references or the data concept, or 2 plus and 2 minus, and you'll always be able to get 100% be able to solve each and every factual question with just that trick, without reading the passage right from the beginning. Right, you read the passage right from the beginning. So without that also you can solve the questions, factual questions. You can get 100% accuracy there. But in reasoning questions, you cannot solve this question without knowing the story of the sentence, story of the passage. Story of the passage is the most important thing in the reasoning questions, or we call it the understanding of the passage, or the reasoning, the typical reasoning. All right, this is what is being tested in SAT, the verbal reasoning. The factual questions are anyways the lower hanging fruits. That's there is nothing, you know, they're not actually testing your brain there, testing your verbal skills there. What actually matters is the reasoning questions, right? Reasoning questions. There are two types of reasoning. Is primary purpose questions. Just a moment, guys. Now, the primary purpose questions. In the primary purpose questions, what is being asked is, what is the primary purpose of the passage? Plain and simple. What is the reason? What is the purpose of passage number 4, paragraph number 4 in the entire passage? What is the main theme of the passage? What exactly is the author trying to tell us? Obviously, it's not the way it is framed, but what exactly is the author telling us from passage for paragraph number 3, right? So, primary purpose of the passage or primary purpose questions are fundamentally, or can be easily said as, summary questions. You obviously need to know what exactly the passage is talking about, right? If you need to know that, In summary questions, the way you're supposed to solve these summary questions is first most important trick. There is a typical way of writing style which you will encounter in the SAT college board or any college board passage for that matter, right? And what is that typical writing style? If the author wants to convey something, either he'll start with that topic or he'll end with that topic, or third category, he'll frame the starting and ending but have the main topic at the middle. Okay, now these are the only things which are possible. Start with that typical topic which exactly he wants to explain, end with that topic, or frame first part and the last part, and the main topic will, or the main conclusion will be hidden in the middle. Okay, now in order to get or understand the summary questions or understand the summary, the gist of it, because there are few passages which will be daunting. They're really daunting. It is time consuming, A, and B, it is really difficult for us to figure out, keep a track of what exactly is happening in the entire passage. For this, the clues or the guru mantra we call it, is always reading. The summary questions will always be in sync with. The summary questions will always be in sync with what exactly? They'll always be in sync with first sentence. Wait. They'll always be in sync with first and last sentence of first and last paragraph. I repeat, the summary questions will always be in sync with, the primary purpose questions will always be in sync with the first and the last sentence of the paragraph. That's about it. So all that you're supposed to do is use the process of elimination and eliminate the options. Eliminate the options which are not in sync with what you have solved, with what you have read. So all that is supposed to do is your answer option must always be, the correct answer will always be in sync with, or must be in sync with, the first and the last sentence of first and the last paragraph. If it is going to be in sync with that, in that case, all that we are supposed to do is eliminate the options which are not actually sufficing that purpose, or not talking the same language which is being talked by the first and the last sentence of first and last paragraph. That's about it. Does not mean the entire summary will be in the first and last sentence of the first paragraph, or it will be segregated in first and last sentence in the last paragraph. It is a compilation of these four sentences: first and last sentence of the first paragraph, first and last sentence of the last paragraph. Does that make sense? And guys, we have never solved passages like this in this manner. All that I'm trying to do here is I'm trying to keep the subjective concept of verbal reasoning aside. What do you mean by subjective? Khush has his own interpretation, Pushkar has his own interpretation, Devansh will have his own interpretation. That subjective aspect we are keeping aside, and we are making sure that we see everything plain black and white. There is no gray area here. We have to use our reasoning ability or reasoning skill to get rid of the typical traps that college board lays down for us. Are you following what I'm saying? It is important for you to implement these concepts. Try and again implement this concept, because it is in the initial stage definitely going to be difficult for you. You have been reading the passages in a certain style throughout your life or throughout the age, right? It is important that you unlearn that aspect. Try to use these concepts. You will fail in the initial stage, and everyone, all students who have kind of succeeded, they have customized these methods for their own understanding, with respect to their own understanding. There are few students I've noticed, they, instead of reading 2 plus 2 minus, they end up reading 3 plus 3 minus, because that's what makes sense to them, and that works for them. So you have to kind of come up because you're a test taker. SAT is actually testing you not on how good you are at math or how good you are at English. SAT is actually testing you on how good you are as a test taker. So you have to improve, or you have to adapt as a test taker, understanding the way the test is responding to you. Are you hearing me, guys? Are you understanding what I'm saying, or is it just blah 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 blah? Guys, Jay, are you following this? Hello. Thanks, Devansh. Vanshika, Pushkar, Khush. Thanks a lot. Perfect. Perfect. Great. Now, this is with respect to the reasoning questions. All right. Moving on. Let us talk about the final question category. The most interesting, again, the question category is inference questions. These days, guys, anyways, these days we are noticing some trends, some changes in the question category with respect to SAT. Now, what is that trend? We are seeing that the questions are not limited to database and factual questions, or rather database and evidence-based questions, or primary purpose and inference questions. We see a category where it's a hybrid of a evidence-based question and a primary purpose question. We see it to be a hybrid of a data-based question and the inference-based question. Based on a particular data, what would the author agree with, right? So all the agree category questions would be inference questions. What would the author agree with? We also call this question category as hypothetical questions. The answers of these question category, the correct answers of this question category must be outside of passage scope. What do I mean by scope? Something which is not mentioned in the passage. So one of the typical process of elimination step here, a process of elimination step is eliminate all options which are cut, copy, paste as it is picked up, cut, copy, paste from the, eliminate all the options which are typical cut, copy, paste from the passage. Does that make sense? So process of elimination step is eliminate all the options which are typical cut, copy, paste from the passage. The moment you see exact sentence from the passage, plain and simple, cut it out. This will never be. Author would not agree with something he has explicitly mentioned. Agree questions would come which are talking about implicit, something which is implied, something which is not mentioned in the passage, where you are kind of doing the hyperpolation, right? In this case, you are supposed to ignore the questions which is as it is picked up from the passage and paste it. All right. The inference questions can never be. Another step, process of elimination. Eliminate extreme options. What are extreme options? The options which mention must. Options which are mentioning like must, always, never. The extreme words. The SAT passage or the SAT concept or question test has to be politically correct. They cannot be, they have to be mushy. They cannot be, too certain about something, because they have to be politically correct. In this case, The must, always, and never, these kind of extreme options, extreme words would never be correct. The moment you see a must or a always or a never in a inference based question, you can straight away get rid of that. Does that make sense? Right, guys? This is how we are supposed to solve the inference based questions. Inference based questions are technically rephrasing, typically rephrasing of mentions. Something which is mentioned, rephrasing, recreating the act or scene, whichever is mentioned in the passage. So that part is being recreated. That's about it. All right, guys. I think that's about it. That's exactly what I wanted to discuss. Evidence-based question, factual and data-based questions are the easiest of all the question categories with respect to SAT verbal. All that we have to do, make it a point that you solve it time and again, extensively practice for what exactly we have, and that should help us. All right. Use the reading principles. Solve at least 10 passages before you sleep tonight. Read at least 10 passages before you sleep tonight using our reading principles. Try to implement each and every step. If you let go of it, means today you will feel really nice about new concepts learned, things that will make sure that your accuracy improves in reading comprehension and everything. But if you're not implementing these concepts, it would just go down the drain. Tomorrow you might not be able to understand what exactly we spoke about. All that you'll have is the feeling that you felt nice at this point of time. Probably I'm not sure whether you felt nice or not. All right, I'm done from my end. I'll ask you guys to open up, shoot questions, and go ahead, guys. Rida, Ronak, Vanshika, any questions, please? Guys, I'm waiting for questions. Else in 5 minutes, I'll just call it the day. Devansh, again, mostly it is scheduled around the end of the month, after 2 sessions probably. Please follow our social handles. On our social handles, we make it a point that all these notices and everything would turn up. So please follow our social handles, and we'll get the answer to that. Mostly around the end of June, last week of June. Yeah, is that okay? Guys, any questions? Kush? Perfect. Guys, okay, I'm running a poll here again.